really good insider as well for both the NFL and for the Washington Commanders. So excited for him to join us. Lake Lewis Jr., ladies and gentlemen. Before we get into, Commanders talk, Lakes, let's talk about what just happened, a few hours ago. So Jared Goff gets the bag, $53 million a year, 170 million guaranteed. And I've said this for people, is that in order to understand Jared Goff, he's arguably, I'd say, has been the most efficient quarterback since he stepped into the league once he got Sean McVay and once they got rolling. He comes into a culture in Detroit and everything just changed. And what's funny about this is a guy with 5 playoff wins now in his career. He's got 185 passing touchdowns over the course of his career, and he's been completing over 65% of his throws. I mean, you're not getting a kind of deal like this anywhere else. And I felt like this was for sure the guaranteed Detroit deal. What was your thoughts on that initially?
I mean, I think it's fitting. I mean, everything you said is totally accurate. And, this is a guy that's really, come into his own since he's come to Detroit. And naturally, he did take a team in the Rams to a Super Bowl. But I think in Sean McVay's offense, he had to be everything. Everything started and ended at the quarterback position. And that still does, with Matt Stafford out there. But in Detroit, he didn't have to be Mr. Everything. He just had to blend in and play his role. And I'm not going to call him a game changer. I mean, a game manager. I know a lot of people throw that around loosely, but because he's made big throws when he's had to. But I think, again, he just needed to be part of something that they were building in Detroit. And now that they, gave him, I think, like 170 million guaranteed, they're expecting for him to lead them to a Super Bowl, which has never been done in Detroit. But they have all the pieces in play to make a run for it this year.
I'll tell you, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how the NFC is cooking. But I'll tell you what, though, the shape of the conference itself, I mean, when we're going post the draft, there is a lot of teams that upgraded on many different positions, whether it was quarterback, offensive line, and wide receiver. So let's focus in on the Commanders because, to me, I'm very happy for this franchise because, number one, the first pivotal pillar that moved was new ownership with Josh Harris. Then comes 2 of arguably, I think, the smartest minds when you think about one who has been focusing with the San Francisco 49ers for years and another one who had arguably one of the best defensive cores from Seattle and then in Dallas. So when you look at this change now for the culture for the Commanders, I mean, this has got to be one Washington fans are excited for and are seeing the future is very bright on the horizon. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, this will be my 15th season. And I have to tell you, I haven't seen this much energy. I don't know if I've seen it ever. If you want to make one comparison, maybe the 2012 team when RG3 was a rookie, there was a lot of buzz in town because they looked at him as a savior. But I think fans now are they're going to be more in the wait and see approach mode with Jayden Daniels. But clearly there's excitement there. The first couple rookie mini camps were really exciting to see the energy, to see the coaching that these guys were receiving. Tomorrow we'll be back out for OTAs. We're able to see a couple of OTAs with the veterans as well. So I'm looking to see how the camaraderie is with the veteran group, core group, and then, of course, the rookies. And I like what they've done. I mean, when you look at the guys that they brought in as far as free agency, Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, those 3 guys are definitely older in age now and maybe on the downward spiral of their career, but they're still productive players, really good football players. But more importantly, they're locker room guys. They're guys that are leaders of men. And I think it's just brilliant for Adam Peters and Dan Quinn to bring those guys in because, like I said, they still have good football left, but they also can be the guys that show the Brian Robinsons, Frankie Louvu, and just all these young guys, even, of course, Jayden Daniels, how to be professionals from day one and how to conduct themselves in practices, which translates to success on game days.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because, I love with what they've done on the offseason. Like you mentioned, you bring in key veteran players. And I think in the end, they needed to make up for what they've lost in the last couple of seasons. We know that it was the change of ownership that really kind of moved the ball. But then in the end, I mean, they lost Chase Young and Montez Sweat in the same season. And, again, they've pushed for their own successes elsewhere. But Washington really needed to replenish what was lost. And so I think going into this season is really going to be one that's exciting. I think Washington is one of my 5 teams listed that I know are going to make that jump. Now, how drastic of the jump will it be? We're not sure yet, but I know they'll make it better because we're seeing the Giants clearly rebuilding within themselves, but they do have a great pass rush. And then you look at Dallas that just literally lost a lot of things. And their question is, are they going to extend Dak or not? Or are they going to extend somebody else? So this is the perfect opportunity for Washington to really kind of sneak in. So when you look at the state of the division, because we know Philadelphia, this is a mulligan year for them. They got 2 new coordinators. They got to make this work. Otherwise, Nick Sirianni's in trouble. And
Yeah.
they've got a couple good pieces as well. So I feel like this is kind of the moment for Washington to really shine, throughout this season, given the state of the NFC, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually predicting Washington to finish second in the division. I know people are going to say, "Oh, it's because you're a homer." No, I mean, I really think that a lot of the things you alluded to, the Cowboys right now, it's tight on around the collar right now for a lot of those folks. From Mike McCarthy to obviously the Dak Prescott. They went back and got Zeke Elliott to come back, so I don't know if you're going to see the same explosiveness. And then, of course, let's face it, you lost your defensive coordinator if you're the Cowboys to a divisional rival. So he's going to know what to do against that Cowboys offense as far as how to game plan and attack it. So that's a big plus for Washington. I will say this, within the NFC East division, it's been 22 straight seasons of a different winner crowned every year. Last year, the Cowboys came back at the end and won it. Well, I'm predicting the Eagles to win the division as of right now. I think they're the most stable talent wise. But I think Washington is a team that, if things click early for them, if Jayden Daniels can hit the ground running, literally, I think they're going to be one of those teams that has a really nice turnaround overnight, and the talent's there. Now it just has to be the coaching and the hunger to match.
So it is interesting. And when breaking down Jayden Daniels, let's talk about that. Is because initially, when we watched Washington, they flirted with the idea of maybe potentially matching the offer for a Lamar Jackson. Well, he ended up getting his extension with Baltimore. So it felt like they wanted some type of game changer in there, which could help to move this organization. So in comes Jayden Daniels. And to me, honestly, when I evaluated the kid, I said, this is the perfect fit for a few reasons. Because number one, there were some struggles that the Commanders are working with the offensive line. But if I'm getting a quarterback that is more elusive, that
Mhm.
gives me very good accurate throws, even when it's 15 plus yards downfield, that gives me at least a sure shot. And not to mention, I've got a bunch of weapons. I feel like tight end could be something they could work on. But in the end, I've got something to work with. So what were some of the tangibles you looked at with Jayden Daniels when it came to player breakdown and getting, Washington fans really excited for this number 2 overall pick?
Well, first and foremost, I knew there was a reason why I agreed to come on your show because you know your stuff. And let me tell you, I kept saying this, even at the draft in Detroit. Even when I was told it was a done deal, the day of, the morning of, people were still like, "Oh no, you're not Adam Peters," blah blah blah. And I'm telling you, exactly the reason why they were always sold on Jayden Daniels. I'll go even as far as to say, if they had the number 1 pick, I'm not even so sure that they would have taken Caleb, because I know that they love everything about Jayden Daniels. They love his competitiveness, but more importantly, he's a weapon. And he's a guy that, when you had a porous offensive line that struggled in pass protection, listen, this is a guy that can make things happen with his legs. We saw that at LSU. We saw that at Arizona State. And I think that he's the perfect fit exactly for a team that Let's face it, when you look at Baltimore, I'm not saying that their offensive linemen aren't good, because individually, a lot of them are. Some of them are Pro Bowlers. But I think Lamar makes some of those guys look much better because he can take off when he has to. He can do some things. It's the same thing in Buffalo with Josh Allen. To a certain extent with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, he can run as well. So I think when you have a guy that you can't just sit back and pin your ears back and think he's going to be sitting in the pocket and can't do anything else, it helps your guys not have to hold the block as long. Maybe now they can hold the block for 2 seconds and then they're looking up and Jayden Daniels running by them. So this is going to be a perfect fit if everything plays out accordingly. And I agree with you. I think it makes their offensive line not look as bad as some people may think it is.
Yeah, and it's funny because when doing the evaluations on quarterbacks and best fits, because the biggest thing that was the question mark was it Jayden Daniels or was it Drake May? I made the pinpoint argument on the Drake May thing is because number one, I've watched film, and credit to really good friends of mine that gave me a piece of film for evidence to show the reason why. You got to have a capable left tackle. If you didn't have that, Drake May looks as stiff as a stone, and it's like you got to make quick decisions. Like that. That's the pace right now of the NFL. And I
Yeah.
feel like Jayden Daniels, you bring him in, this is a win now type moment for Washington when they see this, because they've gone all in on a lot of these pieces, bringing in a lot of the veterans from free agency, and then this now buys you time to develop, and not to mention maybe potentially you go and sign somebody up out there, or maybe address it more in the draft with the offensive line. So I feel like Jayden Daniels gives you that comfortability, and he gives you a little more of that breathing air so that it doesn't have to feel like it's all got to be reliant on the offensive line. They could do their job and you could build it within it. So when I think about this with Cliff Kingsbury's offense, now as a new offensive coordinator, because a lot of people thought, well, he's got familiarity with Caleb Williams, and he definitely loves a Kyler Murray type-esque offense. Breaking down a lot of Cliff's offensive play schemes from the time at Texas Tech and to the time he was with the Arizona Cardinals with Kyler Murray.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that stands out to you that you kind of feel is like, this could be a very lethal game plan for teams that have literally no film on someone like Jayden Daniels?
Well, there's two things that I think help Jayden Daniels tremendously. And this is something that, from my years of covering and, as you said, watching tape and things like that, most young quarterbacks need two things on offense in order to really be successful. And ironically, I'm not going to even mention a left tackle, because if you're a, left-handed quarterback, you need a right tackle. So I'm going to say this. One, they need a tight end. Secondly, they need a stout running game. And something that I think a lot of people don't understand as far as Cliff Kingsbury's air raid offense is that it actually runs the football a lot. And I think for Washington to go out and get Austin Eckler to pair with Brian Robinson Jr., I think that's just a brilliant move for them. And then they signed Zach Ertz in free agency and went out and drafted the kid Ben Sinnott from Kansas State, which in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, they run a lot of two-set tight ends. So yep. I think that this is a lot of things are in play for Jayden Daniels to really be successful as far as the weapons around him. We haven't mentioned Terry McLaurin, a Pro Bowl caliber receiver, Jahan Dotson, who, didn't have the second year that we thought he was going to have, but a lot of that was Eric Bieniemy's system and just a lot of turnover in as far as the organization. So they have a lot of weapons that I think for Jayden, he can come in and really hit the ground running. And I do agree with you that I had said this all along. There were only two quarterbacks in this draft that I thought were day one starters. Obviously, Caleb Williams in Chicago and Jayden Daniels. So Washington got the second one. I really, truly would be shocked if he's not the starter. I know they have Marcus Mariota, who's kind of like a safety net. He's familiar with Brian Johnson, who's now with Washington as far as a quarterback's coach. So there's a lot of pieces in play here, but it's Jayden Daniels' job. It really is. And for everything we've seen over the last couple of days, there's no reason to think that this kid's not going to be in the running for Rookie of the Year.
Oh, absolutely. And especially with the competition he's got around him, because number one is that we know Caleb Williams is coming into a scenario where he's got to now rewrite the script of this franchise. They got rid of the 1950s television, which thank God that they're thinking of offense, but now you've got to make it work. And then Drake May, I feel like this is a project for New England, and it's going to work out in two ways. Is Gerard Mayo just going to be another one of Bill Belichick's shadows as coach, or is this going to translate where this is going to be even better because you got the Jalen Polk pick? So there's a lot of footprints that
Mhm.
could make this very successful, and so it'd be interesting to see. But I think Jayden Daniels, he is in the best scenario and situation. The only thing that kind of gets me about Jayden Daniels is I have watched film some of the times in LSU, he got hit hard.
Yeah, he's got to
There were
get there. For
Yes,
sure.
he does. Absolutely. And so I feel like that toughness with Dan Quinn, he's going to build that toughness in him, and it'll be much, much better. But two parts though on this one, because of course we're excited for Thursday with that schedule release, my friend. And so there's already two games. We're going to set on that before we end up going to Commanders' schedule. So the two that just came out, Dallas and Cleveland, and then Baltimore in Kansas City. So that's going to be a hell of a kickoff for an NFL season up from there. I mean, like when you look at the matchups between the two, I feel like, this is going to be harder because now Dallas is going to feel Dak reliant with the fact of Mike. I'm crossing my fingers because they're only a CeeDee Lamb injury away from this thing looking just completely horrible. But again, I wish the best. But then you've got a great rivalry matchup between Baltimore and Kansas City.
Mhm.
That's got to be one way to kick off a season. And this is how the business of the NFL does this well, right?
Oh yeah, I mean they know exactly what they were doing. I mean years ago we didn't get these kind of, watch parties for the schedule being announced and things like that. So they know exactly what they're doing. And if you were to ask me right now as far as a power ranking before the season starts, I would tell you 1 and 2 is Kansas City and Baltimore. I mean, I know some people in San Francisco might feel otherwise, but I truly believe Baltimore is the team that is and was equipped to beat Kansas City. It was just a complete letdown in Todd Monken's play calling in that AFC Championship. They didn't run the football. But I think now, guess what? They're going to go into Kansas City on that opening game, and they're going to have a monster behind Lamar Jackson, who they're going to run the football in Derrick Henry. So it'll kind of be like a preview of what they should have done and something that they will do should they meet again for another AFC Championship game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about that game. And I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm excited for football just even 2 months away from this thing because, like we said, we look at baseball season for as long as it is. But when we look at NFL, I'm getting content every day from free agency to the draft. And then the schedule released this Thursday. I mean, this has been arguably the biggest businesses. And much like we look at, Amazon, there's always some hot deals that's going on from there. But,
Absolutely.
but what's funny about it is, so when we look at the Commanders' schedule, this is an interesting one. So the two things, um, how do you kind of see this season really pan out because of the opponents that they're facing? Like in your best description, how you feel this season will go for them, and then how do you kind of see their overall record turning out also in the end?
That's a great question. I mean, if you look at the past several seasons, they hovered around 7 wins, 8 wins, and they couldn't get over the hump. A lot of that had something to do with, the inaccuracies at quarterback, as far as from Carson Wentz to Taylor Heineke last year to Sam Howell, who played well at times. But at the end of the day, Sam Howell didn't make the throws that were needed in the big moments. That just didn't happen. And I think that from a talent standpoint, this team's light years better than from a talent standpoint from 1 to 53 than they've been in a long time. I know they still have to translate all this stuff onto the field during game day, but just from the moves that have been made, they seem to make a lot of sense for the schemes that Dan Quinn wants to run on defense. He's brought in some former Cowboys that just looking for opportunities to be on the field a lot more. and Dorrance Armstrong, and Fowler. These are guys that just needed to be on the field a little bit more. Cleveland Farrell's another guy they brought in off free agents from San Francisco. But then you look at what we talked about on offense. Now they have a guy that can make all the throws, that can beat you with his legs, just gives your offense another dynamic weapon, something that needs to be game planned for. So right now, if you were to ask me, is this team better than, at least on paper, than what they have been over the past 4 years with Ron Rivera, I would tell you absolutely 100%. So to me, better coaching, a better structured environment, a hungrier type of team, and now a quarterback that can galvanize your franchise and fan base, that has to be good for 2 more wins. So right now, I would say the Commanders are, pretty much around an 8 to 9 win team. It's a little better than what they've had, but that's only on paper. If they can hit the ground running a lot earlier, then perhaps they could be a 10-win team. I don't think that's enough to win the division or anything like that, but it's definitely enough for them to be fighting for a wild card berth in the playoffs, which I think they will fight for.
Absolutely. And when you start to look at it from the strength of just, the division itself, I really do see them really like outmatching the Giants, because the Giants just have a different agenda amongst them. But I do see them really getting some payback against Dallas. And to me personally, when I look at Philadelphia against Washington, my hope is that I think the Commanders, the best thing that could happen is split.
Yeah.
Yes. And that'll end it in a positive note to where this talent is getting better by the minute and by each of the weeks that they're playing. And so that's the best hope for them, and I think this will be a great season for them moving forward. The competition in the NFC and, the NFC as a whole is really getting better. So this is arguably, I believe, going to be one of the best seasons, I think, that we'll see this up and coming year. So I'm excited about the schedule release, really kind of interested up on it. When you look at a schedule release, what's the things that you kind of look out for? Because I know bye weeks do come into it, because I've been explaining about this. If you're on a 7-8 week stretch, right? And let's say you're starting out pretty battle heavy. You're in the trenches. You're getting all this adversity thrown at you, and then you get a week rest. And then you knew what you were expecting of it. It's built callous up on you. Now you go on a tear on the second half. I mean, that's kind of, an acceptable, expectation for most teams, right?
Absolutely. And I think that if you're Washington, if you look at your schedule, we don't know what it is yet, but you look at some of the games that are going to be coming up for them, that could have more of a national feel to them. In games that, before the draft, you would have thought, who cares? But clearly that Chicago game jumps off the chart, because now you have the number 1 pick in Caleb Williams versus the number 2 pick. Caleb Williams is actually from DC, so that'll be something as well. And then the other game that I'm going to throw out there, I haven't heard too many people talk about it, is Detroit, because Ben Johnson spurned this team and the way he went about it was not professional at all. So don't think that there's a little bit of juice in that. So those are things that you could see pop up and possibly be their first games of the year. So we'll see how that plays out.
I'll tell you one thing. Ben Johnson's going to figure out very quickly that these guys, Josh Harris, they know more than just basketball for.
Trust me, they do. And remember, Dan Quinn played against his Detroit Lions last year, and Detroit had opportunities to win that game, but still, nevertheless, Washington's in a situation where they have a defensive-minded coach, who knows the personnel that he's going to be playing against, especially within the division.
Oh, man. I cannot wait for just the season itself. It's just getting me fired up. Lake, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I mean, the way to just kick off episode 200. I mean, I've been doing this for about 4+ years running right now, and this has always been my career goal, to get up there with, radio and broadcast and just really have a balanced, unbiased opinion mind. I mean, I've kind of nabbed myself the title. I'm America's honesty mind, because at the end, we got to have these conversations that nobody likes to talk about, but it's like, you got to be honest about some of this stuff. And so to have this, and with the long journey road, it's only going to get better from here. But man, you kicked it off in a big way. So I appreciate you coming on by, man. NFL analyst, Washington Commanders analyst, Lake Lewis Jr. Appreciate you coming on by, man. We will see how the schedule shapes up, and we'll see what's going on with those Commanders come the season. Take care, my friend.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me on. Anytime you want me back, just let me know.
You bet, man. Well, there you go, folks. I mean, this has been arguably the best kickoff to a